forces and resources of the Russian Federation are both openly and covertly involved in developing Russian so-called e-sports. The importance of this sector is underscored by orders from dictator Putin and oversight by high-ranking Russian officials. Meanwhile, the unlawful activities of Russian e-sports athletes have yet to be properly assessed by certain Western and other countries. These nations fail to recognize the widespread militarization of Russian society in the totalitarian state and view the activities of Russian so-called e-sports athletes as mere ordinary sports that are beyond politics and war as usual. Particularly dangerous is the large-scale and illegal deployment of Russia's so-called e-sports network in Ukraine's temporarily occupied territories, as during such competitions ideological work is being done to promote annexation of Ukrainian territories, xenophobia and the state Russian agenda about unlawfulness of even Ukraine's mere existence. Russia's so-called e-sports has evolved into a military-oriented special information activity under the Putin regime, posing a significant threat to Ukraine. Initially a private initiative, Russian esports has now become a state project directed by the regime. The primary state organization for esports in Russia is the Russian Esports Federation. The federation is responsible for ensuring the correct ideological education of Russian youth and providing military-oriented specialized information training to meet the needs of Russia's special services and armed forces. To this end, it is also conducting illegal activities in Ukraine's temporarily occupied territories, preparing Ukrainian youth of occupied cities to join the ranks of Russian army. The propagandistic and military-oriented nature of esports activities is evident from the predominantly military scenes of esports competitions in Russia itself, which subconsciously programs players for aggression and ideologically correct behavior, xenophobia and aggression for all Western and Ukraine. There are plans to shift all esports competitions in Russia to, as they say, Russian-made games, aiming to instill so-called Russian patriotism and loyalty to the regime of Putin in youth. This government indoctrination has even extended into the religious sphere, where the establishment of the Orthodox esports school Ascension. Under Putin's orders and other government structures, international competitions called the Games of the Future have been organized to showcase an alternative sports Russian international initiative in response to Russia's international isolation. These games also aim to introduce the latest information technologies, including cyber warfare support, in the activities of the Russian security forces. We might remember the so-called socialist games conducted during the times of the Cold War, as Soviet Union and other communist regimes in Europe were subject to boycott by the civilized part of the world and the Olympic Committee. Times change and sports change. Modern technologies and computer games and computer sports. After all, real FPV drone pilots have certainly trained on computer simulators, and I also know one game by Russian developers that is extremely realistic and involves real-time combat in fighter jets. And yet history repeats itself. We are entering the Second Cold War. It has already started. International isolation in the aggressor state makes them concentrate on their local international games, with participants from Belarus, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan and other former Soviet republics in the near orbit of the Kremlin. We have to monitor such activities, know them and make Russia answer for all crimes against Ukrainian youth committed in the occupied territories. If Russian society allows dictatorship to prevail and corrupt the minds of their children, it is their sovereign right. But to tread on someone else's territory, sovereignty and children is an international criminal offense. Be sure to know about it, because knowledge is our best defensive weapon in the world full of lies and propaganda. We in the game.